able to communicate ideas to for me, design is just the way I look. Observing, looking, watching, with an over dimension on visual interest. But when I studied, as I say, I graduated in '62, design and art education. Well, design education didn't even exist. And it was all very simple and very, I would say, almost poor in that sense, because we just were still in the after-war period. It's only later, towards the end of the '60s, that life became more exciting here, and people also got more wealth, got richer, and then things exploded, you could say. But my school time, everything was very dull. The only thing what we had was a movement, and that was during my academic period in the end of the '50s. That was the Provo. It's an interesting phenomenon. I recently, funny enough, saw a great exhibition in Rome, Italy, about Dutch Provo. And it is a protest movement, intellectual protest against bourgeoisie, against the fact that after the war, society went back into the system from before the war, very autocratic, very old fashion, no really changes. So this movement was organizing very close to my house on the square, kind of alternative performances, you could say. Of course, the word didn't exist, but they had all kind of actions that they were acting and singing and reading poems, and also having fights with the police, because they were not allowed to do that. And this Provo movement, I think it was very important, because it was the running up to what happened in all of Europe in the second part of the '60s. And that is more my generation, because in that late '50s I was a baby. I mean, I consider myself to be very innocent, no ideas. But when it was '66, '67, of course, then it was exactly the period that we opened up and were very active. Well, it's impossible to connect the fact that we were educated in a craft way in the late '50s and the craft interest of today. There is a world of in between, a world of things that has happened. I just stay with myself, and actually I was so young that when you had to make a choice in what direction you wanted to study. And I was interested in interior design, but I found it very, no ideas, nothing going on in that department. I was interested in fashion design, and we did a fantastic project that we designed the clothes for an opera. I found that very stimulating. And there was another department that was jewellery design, which was, funny enough, suddenly we were there with 10 young people, and I found the best atmosphere over there. So there was no any rational reason that I was choosing to go in that direction. It was all very subjective. But it happened to be a good choice. And if I look back to it, it's a good choice because, and that is what you learn about yourself, that in terms of later when we speak about design, I must say that as a designer, I'm mostly interested about objects, things, objects, that are directly related to the human being. Also physically, but also mentally. That is for me the most important part, because through the fact that the objects what I like to work and to think about are so directly related to the human being, I'm able to tell and to explore my thoughts, how I think about society, about life, my opinions. I can communicate through that. I could never be a designer of a fridge or of a car. That might be, but then it would be a car inside, outside, upside down. That would be completely different. But as the way we were educated was very much restricted to the making. We didn't get any intellectual input about what and why and how, for whom. That didn't play any role. But it was, on the other hand, so much dedicated to the making that I still remember our professor having a cigarette here in his mouth, and then always the ashes was falling on his suit. And he looked to you and he looked to what you were doing, and he never said anything. He just took it out of your hands, and he did it himself. And he was, of course, so skilled, and he could really do magic with the metals. And a metal is a very hard and difficult and stubborn material. And you need really lots of skills to be able to manipulate it in the way you want it. And he could do that. And in my lecture, I gave a lecture in Helsinki last week, and then I give this sample when I was once visiting him at his private house, and then on the chimney, above the chimney, there was a little copper object, about, let's say, 25 centimeters, and it was a cylinder, but he made it from a flat, round sheet of copper, and by hammering, you can raise it up. Takes a while, and then up and you have it into a cylinder. Okay, so far nothing special. But then he could hammer it and add extra, manipulate the thickness of the material to this side and to this side, and could make a cross, all from the same material, nothing added, nothing soldered, nothing connected, just by hammering. But then, and this is a miracle, he could even go on and make another cross in the same thing, in the third direction. This is, and I think I appreciated it much more later. I think even in those days, I didn't even realize it, that it was so fantastic. Even though, and also I didn't realize that it was very fortunate to have learned those skills. Because when I left art school, and I have stated this quite often in interviews, to get rid of this ballast, of this weight, because the things we were making were things we hated ourselves. We could never think that we could wear this kind of designs we were making. And so, as a kind of reaction, I was just denying that the craft is bullshit. It is really something that is blocking your possibilities. And, of course, and that was true. And later now I can say it is still true. When the craft is the only reason, then no design comes out. Simply, I could say, I see craft as the fact of being excellent in and to be a master in a certain technique. Actually, it is Richard Sennett, sociologue, who writes very interesting about this in the book about the craftsman. Okay. He compares it, for instance, with a cello player. You only can be a good cello player if you are studying 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, and you have to start when you are very young, and you have to continue even when you're 80. Where a designer, as I see, is much more a communicator. That's how I see the design. We are much more able to communicate ideas to a bigger audience. You are here because of Dutch design, and you wouldn't have been here 20 years ago, because then you would have gone to Italy, for instance. Or before, maybe you would have gone, in the 60s, you would have gone to Scandinavia. So we have made a kind of development in the last, well, even 40 years, in the sense of that here design meant mostly graphic design and of course architecture. These were the two topics that has already in the midst of last century, in the 20s, 30s of last century, has been already very important. Graphic design, internationally famous. And of course it was also a socialistic government with the will to educate people and commission graphic designers to design the post stamps, the money. We had beautiful money in those days before the euro came, done by fantastic artists. So the same with architecture, I mean social housing, very strongly promoted by various governments, and were examples for many architects from all over the world. They came to study how they did the city planning and also how they built social houses with all the needs for the new generations. But product design always remained kind of unimportant. And when I was educated, and when I started myself as a teacher already when I was 24 years old, I had to deal with young designers that had almost no future, because there was a society here in this country where real industry, since the 70s it started, had already gone to the cheaper countries. The shoe industry, the textile industry, furniture industry, at all. And now, of course, it's all in China, and actually the whole of Europe is almost producing in China. So that was for young designers to find and to make a living almost impossible. So some of them, when they graduated, they went abroad. But we have been stimulating them to act as a fine artist is doing. Treat your profession as a designer and create, make and exhibit and communicate. Don't wait till a commission is coming, because it's what I experienced in my career as a designer. It was impossible to work for industry, because as a Dutch person you had no any advantage. Nowadays, industries is coming to Holland and come to our graduation shows and pick up the talent, and they get immediately commissions and can build up an international career. That was completely impossible. Because of the fact that many, because they needed it, many designers had to start to produce their own stuff. Created generations that also learned how to make it. And a very good sample in the Netherlands is Piet Hein Eek. He graduated from the Design Academy in the 80s. No, sorry, in the end of the 80s, I think, beginning of the 90s. And I still remember that as a student, he started to study old books from furniture making. How do you make hinges? How do you make connections? How do you make connections between different materials? which was at that time still very weird, very unexpected. How suddenly come, and then more happened that they got. But of course, later we realized as teachers that they were a generation that had been grown up in modernistic style, modernistic environment, where expression of material was a completely unknown aspect. The design products looked all, you could say, very slick and very so-called modern, mostly black or white, and absolutely no color. It is only later through Memphis in the 1980 that color started to become something. But before it was all black, white. So when this happened, those renewed interest for, you could say, the making. We didn't speak about craft, just the making. Started to get the attention by more young people. And also, if you were educated, for instance, in my case, as a jewelry designer, which is also very hard to find a living, you got many crossovers. So many people from the jewelry world started also to design objects, and also vice versa. This together creates a kind of an atmosphere by time that there is because of the need of the making, there is also growing an interest in the making. And what role does it play? How can we use materials and tell more than we could tell in the past with it? And then you could say somewhere in the end of the 80s that there is a kind of, hidden movement growing of younger generation that much more work with ideas than that they work with functional objects. And that is of course very interesting. That for me it was obvious, because in my jewelry the idea has always been much more important. That was the only thing that really is important, is the idea, and the rest is just serving it. But the idea, that's what it is all dealing. We didn't speak about concept because the word was not popular or whatsoever, but just spoke about the idea. And maybe it's good to just a little funny experience I had in 1980 when I was invited by officials here in Holland to make an exhibition about Dutch design, which I thought, how is it Dutch design? We have nothing. I know some of the young students that are doing interesting stuff. I know an architect, I know a fashion designer, I know. And then, okay, I said, well, to get a commission is fantastic because you get money and you have a deadline. So in 3 months' time, they needed an exhibition. In Germany it was. So then, after all this talk about all the problems with design in this country, how difficult it is with industries, etc., I thought I'd do it the other way around. I'm not going to look to the industries, but I'm going to look to the individual designers and try to bring them on stage as an individual who is creating. And that opened the possibility to make a selection of, really upcoming and unknown. But I also had, of course, to visit Philips, because it's our multinational, and you can't ignore it. And I was friendly and nicely guided around. They had a design department, and it looked like a very sterile office with little fences, little offices and little walls around it. And all those cages were people designing. But mostly they were just drawing by hand, not with the computer. They were drawing, and they were always having a product in front of them, and they are making a new graphic for the front of the object. So at a certain moment I thought, okay, a nice black object, like a little clock radio. It looks quite decent. So I said to the director, Mr. Knut Eran, he is from Norway, he died already. I said, well, this is maybe interesting for my exhibition. And he said, well, sorry, this is from Sony, but we are studying how to improve. And I think this is crazy. Then in his office later, he told me, well, Mr. Bakker, it is quite simple, because for us design is something that is dealing for the profit of the company, and we just look to the market and see what is successful. And at this moment it is Braun. This is a famous German brand. And we pick up the most successful products of that company, and we explore it and fit it in our collection. This is what we are doing. 1980, can you believe it? I mean, for you it's very far away, 1980, but for me 1980 is like, no, but it's very near. It still feels like very near. So just to describe, finally I ended up by selecting the energy saving lamp from Philips, of course. That was just technology, and fortunately no design, no aesthetics. It was just actually quite ugly thing, but I thought that is what they can, inventive and very high technology. Well, to describe what the situation 1980, and at the same time, 1980, I saw in Austria a fantastic exhibition about design with the first Ettore Sotta's Memphis installation, exactly 1980. So here it all came together. Then, if we started Droog Design in '93, then it's 13 years already later. Then there is this period in between that this young generation is exploring and growing. And what we did, Renny Ramakers and I in '93, was just to give it a face and to give it a name and to bring it from the underground into the city, into the world. What I learned about design was that it's only a tool to help industry. So the industry has a problem, the designer is there to help to solve the problem, that's it. And I always have thought, but this is crazy, because the industry is helping us, it's dealing about us, about human beings. We need, we don't need much, but if we need good products, intelligent products. And I think it's very important to make this shift, to turn it around. And it is not the industry, but it is the human being who needs it. And if you think from that point of view, and of course that's also very much, in my case, related to my jewelry. Not only background, because I still make jewelry today. I mean, this is an ongoing process. There, the question always is, what does it do to my body? What does it do to the human being? So the question mark is even more important than the design. I mean, the form, forget it. It's important, of course, at the very end, but it is just those open questions and to find answers for that. And that is easy to say, but quite difficult to do, because there are so many assumptions in our head that are by education, by the place where you come from, the environment, the religion you have been brought up, the family you have been grown up, all these nice or bad things, whatever it is, they form you, they shape you. And I've learned that it is so very important to be able to analyze this and to find your own position in that. And because from this position, then you are able to be completely open. You can be completely free. Nothing is fixed. Even when you get a commission by somebody, I always say, I listen to the commission because I respect people when they commission me, but I always turn it upside down. Because if somebody comes with a commission, it is based on what the person knows. But we, as a designer, we have to know more because it's our profession. We are much longer working on it. So I put it inside, outside, upside down to find reasons what it is all about. And if you work and if you think in such a way, then at a certain moment, even the materialization of thought, you can keep out of it. And if I make, for instance, in the early 70s, a piece of jewelry, which is a photograph of my chest, and I call it a bib and hang it around my neck as for the babies, it is just a thought to communicate that also your own skin can be a piece of jewelry. Why does it always have to be tangible materials or luxury materials or whatsoever? So this freedom creates this openness, and then everything is possible. And of course, this way of approaching this mentality, because it has grown into a kind of mentality, makes it possible to make unexpected steps. And this is what you see today and what you hopefully will see tomorrow. But I'm already looking for the next generation that will be the opponents, what I say, that will be the opponents of what you were at Jurgen Bey, or what Jurgen Bey is saying, because he is a generation younger. And for sure, it's already there. It's already there, and it will come. But it's always based on thinking, reflecting, and shaping your own identity and your own thoughts. And of course, then at a certain moment, when Droog Design in 94, 95 got international fame, then immediately it was called Conceptual Design. And that was great, and still is great. The problem always is, and this is what I've learned through time, that if you are successful, 10 years later you have the epigone. I don't know if you know this word, epigone. It is the follower, and it's simple. The follower is always stupid because the follower takes the outside and never takes the content, the inside. So to be confronted with the outside of a product, lookalikes from Droog Design, is for us, of course, boring. And of course that we have had already. So later in my education in Eindhoven at the master's department, we changed the name into Conceptual Design in Context, to make the context more important. Recently we skipped Conceptual Design and now we only kept context, and now we call it Contextual Design. It's interesting to see how you yourself, you continue, you grow, and you throw away. It's not that you say that that was bad, but you throw away because you have to get rid of all those followers. You want to set the next steps. My God, this is also way back, because the Martin Visser, as a guest lecturer for my students, that was in the Academie in Arnhem, so somewhere in the early 70s, I think. when we were wild and having lots of fantastic plans and doing the most crazy things in terms of design, making prams for a company, making weird office chairs that you hardly could sit on, I mean, all those kind of things. And then one of the great masters that you invite to tell his story, and then he told my students, but you have to be very careful on your ID. And I think I was shocked. I thought, what do you mean? IDs, we have so many IDs, what do you mean? And it's more later that I started to realize what he meant by it. And it's good to say, because what he meant is that an ID in itself is nothing. We can go to a pub and we can drink a beer and we can come up with many ideas. But to take an ID and to take the consequences of the ID and to take all the ins and outs and to fill in, to make it work, and to do the whole traject, the whole story, that is quite really something. And then it becomes something. So again, concept, idea, so easy to say, but it has to be exactly it, and it you only can reach by exploring, looking, testing, training, and then you find it. Yeah, it's a little bit dirty because I use it every day, but this is a dish mop, and I was commissioned, I think it was 1996, commissioned by a very popular department store here in Holland, HEMA. And they're very interesting because they have cheap, functional, good objects. And one of the products I designed was, and one of the questions was to design dish mop. And then I think, a dish mop, okay, but then you have to use a plastic holder and the hair, because that means you have an enormous investment in a steel mold for injection molding. And I just thought, this is nonsense, why? I mean, it's such a simple action, why can't we avoid it? That's how it starts. And then I look around and I see in the shop, I see a round, soft ball where children play with. Later I also discovered that people use it when they have arthritic problem with their fingers to train their fingers. It was around, but I mean, after a while, when you put it in this steel and you close it, then you easily can wash the dishes, and then later you can throw it away and put another one in it. And if you don't use it anymore, you can use it for your barbecue, and because this is simple stainless steel that will last forever. So if you, it's for me like almost like a joke to bring back what it is all about. Why should it be injection molded and all these investments? Why can't it be in a simple way? They sold a lot of them, but at a certain moment seemed still to be too difficult for the public, and then we took it in the collection of Droog Design. So when I want to buy a new one, I go to Droog and buy the next dish mop. Yeah, it's difficult to put it into a question because it has so many different aspects it has. But for instance, we didn't speak about humor, irony. Also, this is something that has been always connected with Droog Design and later as part of Dutch design. And also, this is very dangerous. The same as if you say simplicity. Simple can also mean nothing, can be just emptiness, and then it doesn't work. And it's the same with humor. I think we have learned that an aspect you can use to communicate better, to bring some lightness in your expression, in your thoughts, And humor is a tool to reach the audience better. For instance, if you go to a lecture and somebody is reading a text as if he's reading a book, it can be very boring. But if somebody is telling a story and at a certain moment can even make a little joke about himself, look to me, who am I, blah, blah, that can help to cut down the barrier and bring it more close to people. And one of the things what I always discovered in our presentations with Droog Design is this kind of enlightenment what people get when they look at our products, because it gives a little smile on the face. It's not humor, it's a little smile. And if you analyze it, it's often based on recognition. Recognition because it remembers you of your grandmother maybe. It remembers you of something you have been reading about. That gives a very nice feeling and a very nice recognition. Well, very simple. I'm very much interested in what my son is doing. It's always very dangerous to name family, but he is now more well known than I am, so I can easily speak about him. But what I admire in his way, and I see it as the next step, is that he is reintroducing beauty. And through all our works with Droog Design, I always remember him saying, well, it's interesting, Daddy, it's nice for you. That he had nothing in common with it, but he always loved to see me running around with all those activities. No, what he is doing is to give new expressions of the old idea of functionality, because in the conceptual way, function has been slowly more and more neglected, even forgotten. And what I like in the development of design is that we don't forget, but that we build up. As I mentioned already, I'm grown up with Scandinavian design, that were the aesthetics and the dreams of my youth. Then came the shock with Memphis, the Italian design, in between, of course, the slick Italian design, but then Memphis with a more brutal break with the past, but adding new values to design. Then came conceptual design, putting more accent to the content of the whole idea. And now we continue. But it's not that you say, well, conceptual is over, or Memphis is over. This is very short-sighted. People say this, but I hate that. No, I mean, it is something that we have. We have it explored, and we can work with it. And this is what also young generations can see as their inheritance, and they can work on it. So what I see in what Aldo is doing is giving completely new expressions to functionality by creating beauty. These are all words that has been highly neglected in the recent 10, 15, 20 years. But he gives it a new value. And the value is that it has a high tactility, a high level of tactility. And of course, this is just how you pour with it. And then to avoid the drip, you just keep it like this, and then you set it back to the table. What is it? Difficult to say what it is. He named it. He had an exhibition last year in France, and he named it Creatures. And I think that's really it. So, I mean, I'm a great fan of my son, which of course is something you shouldn't do. But if you ask me what is going on, because I see the same in architecture. After, you could say, Frankie Rem Koolhaas, Sana from Tokyo, they have introduced a new kind of beauty, a new kind of lightness, a new kind of transparency. Of course, without Koolhaas, it could never be possible. I mean, things are, and that's the good thing. This has nothing to do with the functionalism of Dieter Rams for Brown. Obvious, completely different. So, of course, there are many. That's the interesting thing of our profession, that there are so many things coming and added to the profession. That's what I want to say. Yeah. For me, design is just the way I look. Observing, looking, watching, with an over dimension on visual interest. The visuality is something that is funny. I'm in Finland. I was in a hotel, obvious, quite an ugly room, but I notice everything: the door handle, the little rim. The fact that the rim around the door has little plastic, little dots to hide the screw, which I feel very uncomfortable. I mean, it's an oversensitivity for visuality. And sometimes I see students, they don't have that. And then we have a problem, because this oversensitivity for visuality is also based on a feeling of culture. We designers have to be very deep into culture. If not, then we can forget it. And culture is, for me, everything that happens around us. All the art forms that we are confronted with. That's why I like to live here in Amsterdam, because it's so easy all around the corner. But even when I go to Finland, I have 1 hour before my plane arrives and the train goes that I'm in Helsinki, and I can go to the Kiasma Museum and see a fantastic exhibition of African art by chance. But okay, I mean, I do it. This hunger for visuality, if it's not there, then I don't see any possibility for design. Yeah, and one of the new departments in the masters in Eindhoven, and we start now in September, is information design, which has nothing to do with the traditional graphic design. It is what it says. It is, how is it possible that this overload of information, this difficult to consume overload of information, how is it possible to work with all this data and make it communicatable, make it visible, make it handy, make it. That is this new direction of this new department is going to do. But information visual has always been an overwhelming lot. I even don't see so much difference with now and in the past. It has all. It's only you have to see it, and I think that when you don't have that sensitivity for it, that you miss 99%. It's there. And if you say that it's now too much and too overwhelming, of course it is because the accessibility is so fantastic. I love it. I have no problem with it. I love it. I love my iPhone, that I can make pictures wherever I go quickly and I can change. All these tools. as long as they help me. I like it. But at the very end, if I take my holiday, I have only books with me. Not the iPad, but I have paper, real books. And then I have the time to, and I take the time for 4 weeks long to be fully isolated. No multitasking by emails or whatsoever. The whole bullshit is not there. And I'm just reading. And that is the way to upload. But if you, in your life, you hang the whole day for television, what people do, and if you never read a book anymore, but only some picture magazines, yeah, then there's not much going on.